Have you ever noticed how a thought can enter your mind so quietly that you never think to question it? One moment you're making coffee, answering a message, driving home, doing something completely ordinary, and then a sentence appears inside you. You're falling behind. You're not good enough. Something's going to go wrong. No announcement, no warning. It doesn't introduce itself as an intruder. It speaks in your voice. And because it sounds familiar, you accept it. You give it a chair, maybe even pour it a drink. 10 minutes later, your shoulders are tighter, your breathing has changed, and somehow a perfectly normal day feels heavier than it did before. Most people assume every thought passing through the mind belongs to them. Why wouldn't they? Nobody really teaches you to question the ownership of thought. You're taught to manage your schedule, your money, your relationships, your body, but rarely the doorway of your own attention. So thoughts arrive, and instead of being treated like visitors, they're treated like instructions. A fearful thought arrives, and suddenly fear becomes reality. A bitter thought appears, and now an old wound gets reopened. A thought whispers, "Nothing ever works for you," and before long your mind begins gathering evidence like an obedient servant trying to prove its master correct. Strange, isn't it? A single sentence can quietly change the emotional weather inside you. Some spiritual traditions describe these recurring influences as thought forms, patterns of mental and emotional energy that become stronger through attention. You don't have to decide right now whether you see them as literal energetic forms, subconscious patterns, collective conditioning, or simply habits of mind. The practical question is more important. What happens when a thought repeatedly takes your energy, lowers your state, and convinces you that it is you? Because once you understand that not everything appearing in your awareness deserves your agreement, something begins to shift. You stop being merely the place where thoughts happen. You become the one who decides which thoughts are allowed to stay. A clever thief doesn't usually arrive banging pots together and announcing, "I've come to steal from you." The dangerous ones understand camouflage. They learn the rhythms of the house. They wait for the lights to go out. Negative thought patterns work in much the same way. They rarely feel foreign. They attach themselves to something already tender inside you, an insecurity, an old rejection, a fear you've carried for years, and then they speak through it. "See? You knew people couldn't be trusted," or "You're going to embarrass yourself again," or maybe something softer, almost reasonable. "Don't bother trying, you're tired anyway." That's what makes them effective. They don't always attack. Sometimes they negotiate. Once you accept the invitation, your emotional state begins to follow. Thought and feeling feed each other. You think something fearful, your body tightens, and because your body now feels fear, the fearful thought suddenly seems more convincing. Then another arrives, and another. Pretty soon you're not simply having a thought anymore, you're living inside a whole atmosphere created by it. Think of standing in a room where someone slowly turns down the lights. At first, you barely notice. A little dimmer, then a little more. Eventually you're sitting in darkness wondering when the room changed. Most draining mental spirals happen exactly like that, rarely all at once. Usually one accepted thought at a time. Here's where the idea of an energy stealer becomes useful. Anything that continuously pulls your attention toward fear, shame, resentment, helplessness, obsession, or self-rejection is taking something valuable from you. Focus, vitality, imagination, emotional space. Call it a thought form if that language resonates with you. Call it conditioning if it doesn't. Either way, notice the pattern. The thought doesn't simply want to pass through. It wants engagement. It wants you rehearsing the argument in the shower, replaying the insult while trying to sleep, predicting disasters that haven't happened, building imaginary conversations with people who aren't even in the room. Attention becomes food. Anger at the process usually doesn't free you either. Fighting a draining thought with panic can become another form of attachment. Now you're not only afraid, you're afraid that you're afraid. You're not only thinking negatively, you're furious at yourself for thinking negatively. Same room, different wallpaper. A more powerful move is surprisingly quiet. Recognize what's happening without kneeling before it. A thought has entered. My energy changed after I engaged with it. I don't need to continue. No drama, no war. Awareness itself changes the relationship because a pattern that survives through unconscious participation becomes much weaker once you can see it clearly. And once you can see it, you're ready for the question that changes everything. If every thought isn't automatically you, then who is the one noticing them? There's an old image found across many traditions. A guarded gate. Cities once had them. Temples had them. Sacred places had thresholds because people understood something simple. What enters a space eventually influences what happens inside it. Your mind deserves the same respect. Imagine for a moment that your attention is a beautiful inner courtyard. Not empty, not sterile. Alive, full of ideas, memories, plans, questions, intuition. At the entrance stands a guard. Your guard doesn't panic whenever someone approaches, doesn't scream, doesn't attack every visitor. It simply asks, "Who are you, and what happens if I let you in?" That's the skill you're building with your thoughts. A thought arrives. You're not enough. The old version of you might have opened the gate immediately, maybe even replied, "You're right." The guard now asks something different. Is this useful? Is it true? Does following it make me clearer, stronger, kinder, more capable of meeting reality? If the answer is no, you don't have to wrestle with the thought for an hour. You can let it remain outside. Another thought appears. You're going to fail. Instead of building a courtroom around it, you might say, maybe things won't go perfectly, but fear isn't a prophecy. Gate closed. Then another, everyone is judging you. Your guard looks at it for a second and almost smiles. Interesting story. No evidence required, apparently. Gate closed again. Your emotions can help you notice when something has slipped past that gate. Think of them less as enemies and more like smoke detectors. Anxiety, shame, grief, anger, or heaviness don't automatically mean something is wrong with you, and they certainly shouldn't be suppressed. Sometimes those emotions are appropriate responses to real circumstances. But when your emotional state suddenly drops, it's worth becoming curious. What were you thinking 30 seconds ago? What sentence were you repeating? What imaginary future did you just enter? Often you'll discover a thought you accepted without realizing it. Awareness shines a flashlight into the room, and once the light comes on, the monster under the bed usually becomes easier to inspect. Most importantly, thoughts are offers, not commands. Picture yourself walking through an enormous market where every stallholder is calling your name. One offers fear, another offers comparison. Over there is resentment, polished beautifully and sold as justice. Across the aisle, someone is handing out old memories for free. You don't have to taste everything just because someone places a sample in your hand. You can say no. You can keep walking. You can choose a different stall. Maybe courage, maybe patience, maybe a thought as simple as, let's see what actually happens before deciding the worst. Choice sounds almost too ordinary to be powerful, but that's where your freedom has been hiding. Not in controlling every thought that appears, but in becoming more deliberate about which ones receive your attention. And sometimes, when the mind is already caught in the loop, thinking alone isn't enough. You need to interrupt the whole pattern. When a thought spiral has momentum, trying to think your way out of it can feel like trying to put out a kitchen fire by holding a committee meeting beside the stove. Your mind is already inside the pattern. Every argument you make seems to create another counter-argument. So change the channel physically. Stand up, walk somewhere else, wash your face, stretch, sing one ridiculous line from a song, step outside and feel the air for 30 seconds. Move your body in a way you didn't plan. Something simple, almost stupidly simple. Why? Because repetitive mental states depend heavily on repetition. break the rhythm, and you create a small opening where a different choice becomes possible. Imagine a record player with the needle caught in one groove. You're not enough. You're not enough. You're not enough. You could stand beside it arguing with the music, or you could lift the needle. Physical interruption can be that lifted needle. So can slow breathing. So can tapping your hands together, rubbing your chest gently, unclenching your jaw, placing both feet on the floor and noticing 5 things you can see around you. Spiritual systems may describe these practices as moving or resetting energy. Psychology may describe some of them as grounding or pattern interruption. Language aside, the purpose is similar. Stop feeding the loop long enough to regain conscious choice. Once the loop weakens, don't leave the mind empty and expect the old pattern not to return. Choose deliberately. Suppose the thought was, "Nobody values me." Jumping immediately to, "Everyone loves me and my life is perfect," might feel fake, and your mind will reject it. Reach for something believable but stronger. "One difficult interaction doesn't define my worth," or "Someone else's response doesn't get to decide who I am." Maybe the thought is, "I'll never figure this out." Try. "I don't know the answer yet, but I can take one step." You're not trying to hypnotize yourself with pretty sentences. You're training the gate, teaching your attention what belongs inside and what doesn't. Beneficial thoughts deserve energy too. A thought can strengthen you rather than drain you. Keep going. Tell the truth. Rest before you burn yourself out. You're allowed to begin again. You don't need everyone's approval to live honestly. Notice how certain thoughts create space inside you rather than collapse it. They don't always make you euphoric. Sometimes the healthiest thought is uncomfortable because it asks you to change, but there's a difference between discomfort that expands your life and mental patterns that shrink it. Learn that difference. One feels like a difficult doorway, the other feels like a cage. As you become more familiar with your own inner atmosphere, you'll recognize them faster. And then something beautiful happens. The energy that once disappeared into endless mental noise begins returning to you. So from now on, when a dark thought arrives wearing your voice, don't automatically call it truth. Don't automatically call it you. Look at it. Feel what happens in your body when you engage with it. Ask where it wants to take you. Then decide whether you're willing to go. You don't need to fear your mind, and you don't need to become obsessed with policing every passing thought. Just become more awake at the doorway. Some thoughts can pass straight through. Some deserve to stay. Others have been living rent-free inside you for years, rearranging the furniture and convincing you they own the house. They don't.